Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. And in this video, I'm going to be looking at the weekend of November the 23rd and 24th, 2024. So, a lot of people seem to be concerned about nuclear war. Concerns seem to be rising. I think that has something to do with Russia's recent attack on the Ukrainian city of Dnipro, where they used a ballistic missile. I think this missile was something new, people didn't know much about. I think it was called something like the Arachnik, which apparently means hazel in Russian. And the fact that Russia has used on Dnipro a missile which is primarily used for carrying nuclear weapons has really concerned people. Obviously they didn't use a nuclear weapon. I think they just used a lot of metal, but they destroyed a factory in Dnipro. And I suppose it's something we need to talk about. And I want to consider the time at which this missile hit. I mean, the approximate time. I don't think we know exactly when it hit. At least I can't find out exactly when it hit. As far as I can see, it was sort of around 5 in the morning on the 21st. And so that is one thing I want to discuss. And I also want to kind of try to work out why we are moving towards nuclear war, at least why it appears that we're moving towards nuclear war, why a lot of people in the West seem to be a little unconcerned about nuclear war. For example, why are people sort of provoking Russia so much? Now, of course, some of you are going to say, well, Ukraine was invaded. Poor Ukraine. We need to look after Ukraine. What else can Russia expect? Well, I suppose it depends on your perspective, doesn't it? I think I would regard myself as something of a realist in terms of the war in Ukraine. It's not about human rights. It's not about, being progressive. It's just about looking at the reality on the ground. And we're in a situation where this is a war that Russia is going to win and nothing is going to change it. I mean, at least that is my view. But I will be looking at that later in the video. I also want to look at Gary Gensler, who is I believe he's the chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission. And this is an American body, and in certain sectors of America, he's a real hate figure. A lot of people into cryptocurrency hate him because the SEC has sort of launched these sort of constant lawsuits against crypto companies as they claim they're protecting investors. But of course, in reality, what often happens is that mainstream institutions can't service people into crypto, so they have to go somewhere else, and somewhere else is even more dangerous. So he's not a popular figure, and he is perceived as someone who is standing in the way of the cryptocurrency industry, and is, as a result of his actions, America is starting to lag other countries. And sort of maybe this will change because, he's announced that he's standing down on January 20th, and supposedly the Trump regime is going to be a lot more sympathetic to cryptocurrency. So I'll be having a quick look at Gary Gensler's horoscope. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for this weekend, the weekend of November the 23rd and 24th, 2024. As always, if you like this video, I would be really grateful if you were to indicate this by pressing the like button. If you like the video and you're not subscribed, I would be really, really happy if you were to subscribe. Anyway, so let's look at what is happening this weekend. So here is sort of a picture of the positions of the planets at midnight on Sunday. Now, by the way, as far as the pictures are concerned, that's Larry Gensler. This picture here is, it is of a nuclear blast, but it is of a tactical nuclear blast. There's a video with a shell being fired from a gun, and it's a nuclear shell, and so it fires, and then a few seconds later you see this nuclear mushroom. But it is tactical, and I suppose there is the perception that if you do get into a nuclear war, the first nuclear weapons to be fired are likely to be tactical. In other words, they're going to have a relatively small yield. But let's look at what's happening today. Let's look at the chart. So here is the positions of the planets. Midnight on Sunday, set for New York, and there's a moon at 15 Virgo. So it's a moon in Virgo weekend, and that moon in Virgo sort of sets the pace for the weekend. And I suppose with moon in Virgo, you do have a sense that people are concerned about detail. They want everything to be done properly. The moon in Virgo, obviously it's an earth sign, so material details matter. And the moon is making two aspects. It's making a trine to Venus and an opposition to Saturn. So the trine to Venus, the opposition to Saturn, they do have somewhat different connotations. I mean, moon trine Venus, one sees that as being quite pleasant in terms of relationships. Things flow smoothly and people like each other and there's a general sense of harmony. But then moon opposition Saturn, that is a much more difficult energy. One gets perhaps the idea of sort of repressed feelings, maybe. There is emotion around, but can we really express it? Well, not too well, maybe. But perhaps we need to look at the moon trine Venus, moon opposition Saturn as a single move, as a single structure. And if you were to do that, that might say relationships can function perfectly well, provided we don't have any expectations. The relationships have their purpose, they have a structure, and it's not about sort of letting go into a sea of emotion. It's not really that kind of thing. So that aspect, moon opposition Saturn, moon trine Venus, is arguably the main thing happening this weekend. Geocentrically, it's relatively quiet. Sort of Saturday, it's Saturday, the first lunar aspect, moon Virgo. On Saturday, the moon is square the sun. So moon square sun, that means that is, let's get this right, it means it is a last quarter moon. So we've got a new moon coming up on the 1st of December it's around 9:33 Sagittarius. So it's kind of the end of a lunar cycle. So we had the lunar cycle started at the beginning of November. The lunar cycle has been unfolding. I suppose the lunar cycle kind of started with Trump being elected, and I suppose people are getting used to it. And now we've got last quarter. It's the last chance to do anything really practical, maybe this weekend with this last quarter moon. Whatever we were trying to, whatever we started now it's past its peak, and we should perhaps be wrapping up in preparation for that new moon on December the 1st. So that is something that we should consider. We do need to relate to the lunar cycle. The moon is now getting smaller. If you haven't done it now, then maybe this weekend could be last chance. If not, then you're going to have to perhaps wait until next month. So Mercury is of some concern, maybe. Mercury is about to go retrograde. So Mercury goes retrograde at the beginning of next week. And so it goes retrograde, at about sort of 22, 23 Sagittarius. And in fact, it goes retrograde at 22, around 2240 Sagittarius. So Mercury is pretty much coming to a standstill. And that might mean that things are going to get more difficult communication-wise. Maybe if you've got a message to deliver or there's something you want to say, maybe this weekend is your last chance. Maybe it's too late, and you're going to have to wait until Mercury goes direct in 3 weeks' time. Now, Mercury does go stationary retrograde on a fixed star, and it goes retrograde on the brightest star in the constellation of Ophiuchus, which is, I think, the snake charmer. And that star is Ras Al Hag. So, turning to Vivian Robson and his The Fixed Stars and Constellations in Astrology, and he certainly mentions Ras Al Hag. So Ras Al Hag, it's the brightest star in the constellation of the snake charmer, and it's from the Arabic Ras Al Hawa, which means apparently the head of the serpent charmer, or I suppose the snake charmer, and it's not great. It gives misfortune through women, perverted tastes, and mental depravity, and conjunct Mercury, unpopular attitude and criticism through religion, philosophy, or science, difficulties in marriage and quarrels fostered by others, trouble through opposite sex, not very good for game. So, according to Vivian Robson, it's a problem star, and it causes trouble, and perhaps it's not good for relationships. I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but I suppose we have to be careful what we say, and this concept of depravity may not be our depravity, but might be someone else's depravity. So that's the picture this weekend, obviously set for New York. If you change the focus and you move it to Sydney, because don't forget New York has the moon at noon in the middle of a weekend, at midnight on Saturday. Midnight on Sunday, the moon is at 15 Virgo. If you switch that, you get to if you switch that to Sydney, Australia, the moon is just a bit earlier. The moon is at 7 degrees Virgo rather than 15 degrees Virgo. I don't think that there's such a difference there. I suppose if you're in Australia, over the course of a day, the moon will be applying to over the course of Saturday, the moon will be applying to an opposition of Saturn. So Saturday might be a little bit difficult in Australia or New Zealand. Things might not move as fast as you'd like them to. Sunday, I think, would be a better day, because obviously the moon moves away from that opposition of Saturn, and its next aspect would be, what's its next aspect after that? Then it starts to move to a square of Mercury, square of Jupiter. That's something that we will all have to deal with. Yeah, that is an aspect going on for everyone. Moon making a square of Mercury, square of Jupiter. So that's I don't know. I wouldn't say something necessarily to look forward to, but by the end of a weekend, Moon in Virgo, square Mercury, there may be things that need to be said. Okay, so in terms of the heliocentric view, so let's. So putting the Sun at the centre of the solar system, we get like that. There we go. So that's the heliocentric view. Mars has moved into heliocentric Cancer. There's a Mars quincunx Pluto aspect here, and so with Mars quincunx Pluto, that says something about perhaps the quest for power. We want power, or some of us want power, but Mars quincunx Pluto, makes it a little bit difficult. Mars wants to apply itself, wants to assert itself, but Pluto is sort of getting in the way. It's all a bit heavy. It's all somewhat difficult. And talking about Pluto, we have a trine, the trine between the Earth and Pluto, which has been sort of taking a lot of our attention, maybe I mean, you could say that this attack on Dnipro that took place around the time that the Earth was trine Pluto, which is the same as the Sun sextile Pluto. So I think issues of power, continue to be important. Who has the power, who doesn't have the power, and I think that the heliocentric chart is indicating that. But I wouldn't have said there's a huge amount going on from a heliocentric perspective. Okay, you might say Venus is semi-sextile Chiron. I mean, that is a pretty minor aspect, and I don't know, Venus semi-sextile Chiron may be about wanting our independence in relationships, or perhaps feeling that we've been slighted, that someone hasn't treated us properly. And as a result, we are going to want our independence, perhaps. We don't want to be treated like that again. I mean, that is a possible manifestation of Venus semi-sextile Chiron. So anyway, let's now consider the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for the weekend of November the 23rd and 24th, 2024. Aries. Aries, you are perhaps in a state of mind where you feel that things have gone perhaps a little too far, and you want to pull things back a little and maybe create a bit of stability. Yeah, I mean, stability does matter, and you want things to be done properly. And I think that is important to you. And that might mean, Aries, that you're able to restrain yourself more than usual. And perhaps you have a good sense of timing. You understand, Aries, that some things are best done at particular times. And it would be nice if you could be spontaneous and if you could do whatever you like, but it's not really the time for that. And perhaps, what you really realize is that maybe things are a little bit of a mess, and that you want to know what's going on, and so you don't want to overcomplicate things by perhaps moving too far too quickly without having done adequate preparation. Though, I mean, I think that you continue to be pretty friendly, and I mean, at least you're friendly once people start talking to you. You're still very good at talking. You can make people feel comfortable, but there's just a certain nervousness to you at the moment, which perhaps you didn't have, say, yesterday. You're just feeling the sense of, what could go wrong. That is bothering you. That's something that Aries doesn't normally have. Aries is all about, we just accept the situation as it is. We don't obsess about it, and we move on. And if it does go wrong, it goes wrong. We have to deal with it at the time, but we don't get too worried about it. But this weekend, Aries, you might feel that you do need to spend a little bit of time making sure that things don't go wrong, because there is a fear there. And it might be that you'd like to let go, you just like to be spontaneous, but something certainly seems to be holding you back. And I think also, we've got a last quarter moon, and with the last quarter moon, it's perhaps somewhat frustrating because you kind of know what you want. You kind of have a clear sense of where you'd like to be going, and in one sense you're quite optimistic about it. But also, with this last quarter moon, you realize that there are all sorts of reasons why you might not be able to achieve what you want, and it just might feel that you're realizing it all at the last moment. And if you don't deal with it now, then the chances of achieving what you want are going to be pretty slim, and it may just relate, to this whole month of November, which sort of started with a new moon, and now the whole thing is in crisis. I mean, by crisis, I mean might be a decision point. So you feel that in the last part of the month, you just got to make sure that you really, really focus, because I think at the moment you're aware of how things can go wrong. But I think that you're going to get an adequate level of support. You're not on your own. I think that the people close to you are responsible. They understand their obligations. And if you're prepared to ask for something in a sort of a down-to-earth, fairly sort of humble kind of way, then I think you'll be given the assistance that you need. Taurus, you at the moment have a good sense of what you can do, and certainly where your limits are as well. I mean, it's good that you know your limits, because if you know your limits, that means that you're not going to be wasting your time. You know, it's so easy to sort of waste your time doing something that you simply don't have the energy to see through. And so at the moment you are quite clear about what is achievable, and you're not going to sort of waste time on doing anything too far-fetched or stupid. And that means that you can actually, really do quite a lot this weekend. And I think that if you do start doing something, you're going to want to do a good job. It doesn't matter what it is. It might be to do with pleasure, leisure. It might be just something sort of that's more hard work. But whatever it is, you'll want to do it right. And so, Taurus, you just might take the view there's no point in doing anything unless you can do it to almost perfection. Not absolute perfection, but at least that can be something you can strive for. If you feel that you can't be perfect, or there's no chance of being perfect, then maybe you're not going to want to bother with it. And I think actually there's some merit in that approach, provided you don't see perfect in a sort of an obsessive way, because different people have different talents, and there's no point in you doing something if someone else could do it better. And so I think that is probably going to be your general approach. And with the moon making a trine to Venus, I think that your overall approach is going to be creative, far-sighted, but in a sensible way. I mean, when you think about being far-sighted, it's about considering what is possible. But Venus is in Capricorn, moon is in Virgo. You're thinking about what is really possible. You're not going to kid yourself. I mean, that is absolutely not going to happen. You're going to be optimistic, but not so optimistic. And so that really does suggest quite a useful day. I would perhaps recommend that you don't get too caught up in your social life. There are some people who can really be helpful, who can be really useful, but the moon is opposition Saturn. And so with a moon opposition Saturn, it may be if you put too much emphasis on socializing or meeting people, the whole thing is just going to feel completely unsatisfactory. So choose your company very carefully. I think that is really important. Gemini, we do need to think about Mercury. Mercury is your ruler, and things are happening with Mercury. For a start, Mercury is slowing down. I mean, it's really slow because it goes stationary retrograde in a few days' time. I think something like Tuesday or so, something like that. So you can feel it. You can feel that things are not moving as quickly as they used to. And at the same time, your attitude and approach may not always be very helpful. And that may have something to do with the fact that Mercury is conjunct Ras al Hag, the head of the snake charmer. the brightest star in the constellation of Ophiuchus. And so with Mercury conjunct Ras Al Hag, you're maybe in a state of mind where you are attracting difficult events. Your attitude may be at fault, and there's something a little bit destructive about you at the moment. I mean, it's not that you are consciously destructive, but you might just get involved with things that just don't work out. And this includes relationships. Relationships could be problematic, and we shouldn't forget that Mercury is opposition Jupiter. It's not exactly opposition Jupiter, but when Mercury goes retrograde, it will move back towards that opposition with Jupiter. So that's going to happen at some stage. And so your attitude in terms of relationships might not always be very helpful. So that's one thing to consider over the weekend. I think that it would be good, Gemini, if you could be just really very aware of your faults and perhaps your darker thoughts, and the way those darker thoughts could be sort of pushed out onto the world around you. I mean, by the way, of course, I've got my sun in Gemini, so don't feel that I'm singling you out. And your thoughts also, part of the problem might be that you're also being unrealistic. There is a real chance of that, I think, and maybe part of any anger and frustration might be the fact that you were perhaps over hopeful. You were expecting things to happen. You had high hopes, and it's nice to have high hopes, but is it actually going to work? Well, no. I think there's just a possibility of just being too optimistic, realizing that your optimism was misplaced, and then perhaps turning in on yourself, or perhaps turning on other people. So Gemini, just be aware of your capacity for causing trouble. I mean, we can all cause trouble, can't we? I mean, that doesn't mean you're deliberately causing trouble. It just might be that your state of mind is troublesome, and people start to feel that. So, what do you do about the situation? Well, I think it's important that you don't overreach. Try to keep it simple. Don't plan on doing too much over the weekend. And, if you can find a way of being somewhere safe and secure, where you feel there's no pressure, where you're not confronted with people who are annoying or people who have thin skins. Thin skins. I mean, I think that Geminis can say things which can be quite upsetting. They always can. They don't mean to. Not quite. They almost mean to. But don't put yourself in a position where you're tempted to say too much, because it might cause the wrong impression. And I suppose also it might be a good idea to sort of steer clear of authority figures, people who are judgmental. I don't think you'll take well to those kind of people. And on Sunday, the moon makes a square to Jupiter, square to Mercury. So there's a sort of a T-square forming on Sunday, because you've got that opposition between Mercury and Jupiter. You've got moon on the T, and that T-square needs to be treated with a certain amount of caution, because moon hitting both Jupiter and Mercury just may encourage you to be too active, to say too much, to get involved in something that is not really useful at all. But we have got to try to be constructive about it. I mean, Mercury opposition Jupiter, what does that mean? Mercury opposition Jupiter is about the desire to express yourself, to say a lot, to think a lot, but it could get out of control. But with the moon making the square to Jupiter, making the square to Mercury, the moon being on the T, perhaps we can start to see that in a positive light. What you should be trying to do is to ground everything. There are all these ideas floating around, flying around, and a lot of them are unrealistic. And when you realize they're unrealistic, you might get upset. But if you can try somehow ground it all, not take on too much, and perhaps just focus on what you know and trust, and not feel that you have to take on too many obligations, too much responsibility. If you can ground it all, then I think in the end, Gemini, you should be okay. Cancer, you probably have a fair amount to say for yourself. I mean, you are able to notice things, and I think that you notice what is important, and I think that in most cases people will listen to you, and I think that your observations are certainly going to be very important. There are things you observe that other people just can't see, and you almost sort of might not want to say it because you think people have already seen it, but don't make that assumption. What is obvious to you is not necessarily obvious to anyone else. So if in doubt, I would have said that you should speak your mind, because it might be, in some quarters, be a complete revelation. And I understand that that's not necessarily what you're going to want to do. I mean, the moon is opposition Saturn, and so with the moon opposition Saturn, you may feel that something is preventing you from speaking your mind, that perhaps there are forces out there that are larger than you, or people you're slightly afraid of. You don't know how they're going to respond, and you might feel the best thing to do is to say nothing. But no, I don't think so. I think it is a time to be saying what you believe is true, because the moon, yes, it does make an opposition to Saturn, but having made that opposition to Saturn, it makes a trine to Venus. And so that moon trine Venus, with Venus being in Capricorn, your opposite sign, that moon trine Venus is just very, very pleasant, and it allows you to communicate in a down-to-earth way, but also in a way that is reassuring. And I think that is something you can do. So maybe over the weekend, in terms of how you relate to other people, there may be a moment where you just feel you cannot relate, where something is holding you back. But if you just see it through, then you'll find a way of communicating, a way of talking. And I won't use the phrase "it's like a dam bursting," because that gives the idea of something dramatic. It's not anything dramatic. It's just about you working away at something. At first, perhaps feeling frustrated, but in the end, things start to move. Now, we do have a last quarter moon this weekend, and Cancerians can be very sensitive to the lunar cycle. And new moons and full moons are particularly important, and so last quarter moons might seem a little minor, but you have to understand what that last quarter moon is about. The last quarter moon represents perhaps a crisis point, because you have a lunar cycle, and this current lunar cycle started on, I think, November the 1st. Is that right? November the 1st? And it sort of finishes on, I think, December the 1st, because we've got have I got that right? Yeah, we've got a new moon on December the 1st, because we had a full moon on November the 15th. And so that last quarter moon is the final point in the cycle where anything can be done. So, whatever started at the beginning of a month, now might be the time when you have to actually make it happen. And you understand that it's a fair amount of work, but you also understand that work on its own is not everything. You actually perhaps have to get through to people in order to really make sure things come together by the end of a month. So that might be about talking to people on the phone. It could be about visiting someone. So it may be that over the weekend there has to be a visit or a phone call or a conversation in order to make sure that you can see through the month's work. And so that's perhaps a last chance. I mean, we're talking about something relatively short term. If you miss a chance, I mean, don't worry, there's a new moon. There's a new moon on December the 1st, new moon, new lunar cycle. The moon will be waxing again, and that's certainly going to be good for you. So there might be a bit of a hurry if you want to complete things soon, but if you're more patient, if you're prepared to wait until next month, then maybe it's not so important. Finally, I suppose I should say a little bit more about relationships. With this moon opposition Saturn, there may be moments over the weekend where you just feel that you and someone else just are not getting on, that you're poles apart. But don't jump to conclusions, because Moon, having made the oppositions to Saturn, makes a trine to Venus. So that might be about realizing that you and someone else are poles apart, but then staying with it. The Moon makes a trine to Venus, and that might be a time when you can actually realize that there is enough in common, that regardless of your differences, there's sufficient common ground. Leo, the Sun is continuing through Sagittarius, so it's now sort of 2 degrees Sagittarius, and so overall, I think that is useful for you. And the Sun is making a trine to Mars. Now that's trine between the Sun and Mars is not going to be exact this weekend, but early next week it will be exact. And so Sun trine Mars, Mars moving through your sign, Sun moving through Sagittarius. It's a time when you're going to be very energized. I think I talked about this yesterday. It's this fiery grand trine, if we include the North Node, that is coming together over the next few days. And I'm hoping, Leo, that you're going to be able to, take full advantage of it. Having this grand trine in fire, again, if we include the North Node, it's very motivating, and you know what needs to be done. You don't have to. I suppose, trust anyone, trust anything. It's not about that. It's just knowing. And so, Leo, because you know, then you're able to act in a way that is really quite decisive and clear. And it's not a time for, I suppose, having discussions or arguments or sort of contemplations, because if something needs to be done, then it needs to be done. There's no point in procrastinating, and that might be how the Sun-Mars trine is working. So if you feel, Leo, that something is really moving your way, that you have a clear idea about what should happen, then, Leo, I would have said just go for it, and you're going to be able to put really a considerable amount of energy into it. So once you've, in a way, identified your target, then, Leo, I don't think there's anything more to worry about. You'll just keep going until you've found what you're looking for. I mean, that is the broad and most important picture over the next few days. I mean, we can look at things at a lower level. It's true that the moon is moving through Virgo. And moon moving through Virgo, it may be for some Leos that there are a few concerns about serious issues. At least they seem like serious issues. And, the moon moving through Virgo is making an opposition to Saturn. And even though it's a weekend where people are supposed to be relaxed, I'm not sure that you're going to be entirely relaxed. And there may be things that you feel that need to be worked through, perhaps of a material nature. And that means it's going to be hard work to entirely enjoy yourself this weekend, even though the sun is making a trine to Mars. And perhaps what might be getting in the way of your enjoyment is just the knowledge that you have to do something of a routine nature, something that is boring. And I suppose in that situation, just go and do it. And if you just once you do it, you're just going to feel a whole lot better. And then the moon, having made an opposition to Saturn, it makes a trine to Venus. And that moon trine Venus is going to, I think, make you aware of what needs to be done. I think that it could be about financial knowledge and financial organization, and just knowing that if things are done properly, you're going to be okay. And there may be that awareness over the weekend that, sure, money might be of some concern. You're certainly aware of the many ways in which financial issues could run against you. But I think you're also aware of what you need to do to protect yourself. And it may be that you get to a stage where you really worry about something, and you keep worrying, and then the worrying gets so much that you feel you need to check on something. You perhaps need to read a document or get some more facts. And then you do the research, and then you realize actually your worry is largely unfounded. So I think, Leo, this weekend there is scope here for reassurance or self-reassurance, perhaps through your own efforts. But this must not take away from the fact that the sun is making a trine to Mars. The sun is starting to make a trine to the North Node. It is a very exciting and vibrant time for you. And so, don't let Moon in Virgo opposition Saturn spoil the party. Virgo, the moon is in your sign, and that is certainly something that is useful. I mean, it's always good when the moon is in Virgo, and you're going to be very aware of your environment. You're going to be very aware of what's in your environment, and I think that you're going to want to create an environment which is healthy and life affirming and is supportive. So this means that you're going to be very aware of what is unhealthy. So if something is not right for you, is upsetting your physical or psychological balance, you're just going to know straight away, because Moon in Virgo is really hypersensitive. And I think that hypersensitivity, it can be a disadvantage, I suppose, if you focus too much on what is wrong and you don't do anything about it. On the other hand, if you act quickly, then I think that you can really do yourself a favor. So, always, Virgo, over the weekend, just consider where you are. Consider what you're breathing in. Consider what you're eating. Consider the vibes. It makes such a big difference to you. And if the atmosphere is not right, just leave. You don't have to be there. Whatever it is that you're doing. Or if you can't leave, then change it. I suppose in your own home, if the atmosphere isn't right, then you can't actually change your environment. But you can't leave your environment. You have to, in fact, change the environment. So whether it's opening a window or making sure that, I don't know, there's no pollutants, looking at what you're eating, making sure you're eating the right stuff. I think all of that does matter. And in terms of, what can be disruptive, well, other people can be disruptive. I mean, some people you are just not going to like, I don't think. I mean, there are some people who are just not to your taste, and they are holding you up. And I suppose you may feel that you have sort of no choice to stick with them. Well, you always have a choice. And if there's one person who can mess you up, there's another person who can make your day. Everything balances. And the moon makes an opposition to Saturn, that is true, but also the moon makes a trine to Venus. And that moon trine Venus that's a really good aspect. And that moon trine Venus allows you to find the right place for yourself, to find somewhere where you not just feel comfortable, but you also feel that you can actually do something that is really you. And that's perhaps what it's all about, finding you. And with the sign Virgo, it's all about making distinctions. It's very often about making distinctions. That can be the essence of the sign Virgo. You make a distinction between what is healthy, what is unhealthy, what is life-supporting, what is not life-supporting, what is your destiny, what is not your destiny. You make these distinctions all the time. And you could be overwhelmed by having to make these distinctions, but if you're decisive, then you can actually use this ability to make distinctions and really start to understand what it's all about, what this weekend is all about, and how best to use the weekend. You don't want to waste it. So I think it can be a great time for you. Though I should say that Mercury, which is of course your ruler, is kind of deteriorating a bit, because Mercury is coming to a standstill. And it does go retrograde at the beginning of next week, and it just may be that there are certain decisions you thought you've made that actually need to be revisited. So Virgo, if you're feeling completely certain about something, you feel it's all done and dusted, you've made up your mind, don't be so sure. There is a possibility that you need to change your mind. And it's not nice to change your mind, particularly if you've made promises, but sometimes it is actually necessary. And you might get criticism if you're changing your mind. You might be told that you're unreliable, but you have to do what is right. And so perhaps with Mercury moving to a standstill, you need to reconsider some of your recent decisions, because some of these decisions may be based on a false premise, and over the next few weeks, you need to sort of work them through. But I'll be talking more about this because it is a big event, Mercury going retrograde, and I think I need to sort of go into it in detail. When I do your horoscope sort of for Monday and Tuesday, and that's something that I will definitely be covering. Libra, you don't have to. I mean, that is an important theme for the weekend. You don't have to. There's no one saying that you've got to do something, that you've got to be somewhere. You can just do things in your own way. And some things have to be sorted out on your own. You don't necessarily need anyone's help, and it can be quite relaxing, can't it? Not having to worry about outside demands. Yeah, those outside demands might exist, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to take them seriously. And we have the moon moving through Virgo, and the moon is making a trine to Venus, and that moon trine Venus is very pleasant, but it's it's not very high profile. It's an understated aspect. It's not something that is encouraging you to do lots of different things, to be a manic extrovert. No, that's not how you want to be. And I think that you're going to be happiest, Libra, when you're just doing things, in your own way, at your own pace, and sort of most importantly, in a location of your choosing. And that does matter. So if anyone is telling you to do something or to go somewhere, just ignore them. Well, unless you really want to go. But I don't think it's a weekend for sort of putting yourself out. And I think that the more time you have on your own or with people you really care about, and you know and you trust them, and perhaps you love them as well. I mean, that is really the best way, I think, of spending the weekend. And at the same time, you're not a completely selfish person. You're not totally wrapped up in yourself and your own needs. That's not what it's about. It's about you actually realizing that things are happening, that dramatic events are unfolding. Some of them might affect you, some of them might not affect you, but you can just feel this unfolding, and perhaps you need to think about it a bit more, and perhaps that would be a good way to use the weekend. I mean, not all of the weekend, but just to think about the way the world is developing, because you are sensitive to it, and you have your own ideas, and you perhaps feel that sooner or later you are going to have to undergo some form of transformation, but your current approach just isn't quite good enough, and that a radical change will soon enough be required. And sort of over the weekend, that might be something you want to think about and something you want to contemplate, and you don't really need anyone's help or input, because you do understand it all. You do understand the way things are working, and when you feel that there are serious events abroad, the last thing you want is to just be socializing, doing things that other people want you to do, being at the beck and call of everyone. That's not what you want. And so it's a time to realize, Libra, that your main priority is you yourself, and that's probably all there is to be said. Scorpio, we have the moon moving through Virgo, and with the moon moving through Virgo, I think that you're fairly comfortable in terms of other people. I think that you can put up with a fair amount. I think that you're able to deal with different people. You're not going to be overwhelmed by them. I think that you'll understand that you have your own space, and you can look after it, and you can look after this space. And so that does mean that you can put yourself out socially. So if you are with people over the weekend, I think you can enjoy yourself in a quiet way, but you're not going to, I think, be taking too many risks. I don't think you're going to be giving very much away, and that is good. And the moon is making an opposition to Saturn and a trine to Venus. So moon opposition Saturn, you certainly have to socialize on your terms, and that doesn't necessarily mean choosing where to go to. It means that once you go somewhere, you can choose how to deal with the situation, how to make that part of the room, or wherever you are, whether it's a restaurant or I don't know, a theatre or whatever it is, you can make it part of you. You have your little space and you can look after that space. And that's that moon opposition Saturn. And then the moon does make a trine to Venus, and moon trine Venus is a pleasant aspect which allows you to, I think, talk, communicate, be friendly, and people will appreciate you and they will listen to you. And yeah, the things you say will be, I think, of sort of high quality. And you just have some observations to make with that moon trine Venus, which I think Scorpio, a lot of people are going to appreciate. So that's one aspect of what's going on this weekend. On a slightly longer term level, we've got the Sun making a trine to Mars. Now, that Sun-Mars trine is not actually exact until the beginning of next week, but it's pretty strong. And I think I've already talked about it, because what we have a grand trine involving Mars, which is your ruler. So Sun is making a trine to Mars. Sun is making a trine to the North Node. Mars is trine the North Node. Okay, that Mars trine North Node I think was exact on Friday, but that grand trine I think is very helpful for you. And so over the next few days, make an effort to be positive and to work out where you want to go. And you should have a strong feeling of that already, but it's not just a feeling, it's just a knowledge that you're moving somewhere, and you're moving somewhere in a way that is sort of fortunate, where you're looked after, where indeed you can look after as well. You can be someone who is very supportive, and people will, I think, sort of look up to you. So make sure that you use that energy. And if this may relate to business and career, depending on the situation, could well do. So if there's something of a career or business nature coming up early next week, then it may be that you can do something to really start to sort of make it happen. And it's sort of a preparation and just feeling which way the universe is going. And it's not really a feeling, it's a knowledge. It's just a knowledge of the way the universe is going, and perhaps it's a knowledge of what the universe wants for you. So in that sense, it's not just about business and career. That sounds a bit mundane, and I'd probably use that phrase, those three words, rather too much. Business and career. It sounds a bit lazy, and it's about a sense of what you're supposed to be doing over the next few days. And there does seem to be a mission that you have, which of course may have nothing to do with business and career. Maybe at a higher level, but you do seem to have a mission between now and the beginning of next week, and you get a strong feel for it, and you just know that it's right for you. So keep going and keep being inspired. Sagittarius, you seem to want things done. There's something very particular you seem to want in an almost obsessive way. It matters. And actually, you're prepared to put an incredible amount of power into the achievement of whatever you want. And I think that's probably a good thing. I mean, you've got to be definite, and the Sagittarius season has started, and you don't want to be too relaxed and chaotic about it. Okay, it's nice to enjoy yourself, it's nice to have fun, maybe a weekend, but there's something that does seem to concern you in particular. You do want it, and you're at a stage, I think, when you can put a lot of power into the situation. You can be really quite powerful, and the exercise of your power, I think, will be noticed. So, Sagittarius, don't sit on the fence. Don't think that your job is to make everyone happy. That's not your job. Your job is to, in some ways, it's to disturb people a bit. And yeah, if you decide that something needs to be done, then Sagittarius, then just go for it. Well, of course, within reason. I mean, obviously, don't do anything that is destructive or dangerous or anything like that. But in most cases, if you have a sense of purpose and you feel that now is the time, then maybe that is absolutely right. And I think that there may be a little bit of urgency here because it is the last quarter. So the last quarter moon. So we have got a new moon at about sort of 9:10 Sagittarius on December the 1st. So this lunar cycle that has been unfolding through November is reaching finality in a sense, because after the last quarter, we've got a waning moon. It may feel that there's a last chance. If something that needs to be done, something you want to do by the end of the month, then you're going to need to use everything you've got in order to make it happen. And so there may be a little bit of hurry. But I mean, I don't want to hurry you. I mean, that is kind of up to you. But, we also have to consider the fact that we've got a grand trine in fire. So that grand trine in fire, we've got the Sun in Sagittarius, trine Mars, trine the North Node. Sun in Sagittarius is applying to that trine of Mars, and also applying to the North Node. So that should be at least very motivating. Everything is coming together for you, and also got the Moon in Virgo over the weekend. Now, Moon in Virgo isn't always great. Depends on who you are, depends on your sign. But when the Moon is in Virgo, it's in an important angle of your chart. It's in the highest sign, from the perspective of the Sagittarian chart. Virgo is right sort of up there at the top. So when Moon is in Virgo, that is quite motivating, and it's encouraging you to achieve your ambitions, whatever they might be. So when you put everything together, Sagittarius, I think that the next few days should be a time of real accomplishment, when you sort of make a decision, decide it was something you go for, and you just go for it, and you're going to be able to put really a huge amount of energy into it. So Sagittarius, just go for it. I mean, don't doubt yourself. I think that is going to be, very important. Though the moon, that moon in Virgo over the weekend, it does trine Venus in Capricorn, and that is quite a materialistic trine. Both Moon and Venus in Earth signs, and of course it is the weekend. I suppose the weekend is supposed to be a time of rest, but maybe we need to see that Moon trine Venus, how it might work. Now, it's just tempting to perhaps see Moon trine Venus in terms of money and success. I suppose that is a possibility. So I don't know, if you're working over the weekend, if you're pursuing your ambitions over the weekend, then that Moon trine Venus I think is going to be very helpful. But that Moon trine Venus could be just about the Earth, and enjoying the Earth, enjoying being around nature and sort of plants, and feeling that the natural world is special, and perhaps you've got a purpose within the natural world, and that when you're around nature, that you might feel that in itself is telling you what to do, and that the plants perhaps are speaking to you. I mean, that's a possibility. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's something you might want to bear in mind. And that's almost it. But I should say one thing about other people. You want to do things your way, and you don't want anyone to disrupt you or to hold you back or to create problems that you don't really need to deal with. And I just think there's some chance at the moment, over the next few days, that someone might be an irritant. And, we've got a situation where Mercury is in mutual reception to Jupiter. So, in general, you and other people do have a certain sympathy with each other. But Mercury is, it's about to turn retrograde. At the moment, it's conjunct a fixed star called Ras Al Hag. And Ras Al Hag, the head of the snake charmer. It can be people who have a less than constructive attitude. So be a little wary of other people. Even if you know them very well, you might want them to share in what you're doing, but they may not be useful. They may not be prepared to share. And if you spend too much time listening to their concerns, having to respond to whatever's bothering them, well, that could be disruptive. It could slow you down, and it could make it more difficult for you to achieve whatever you need to achieve. So I'm not saying avoid other people. I'm just saying be wary of them. Capricorn, things are better, I think. I think over the last couple of days, Capricorn, I've been a little bit negative, but now we've got the moon in Virgo, and the moon is making a trine to Venus. Remember, Venus is moving through Capricorn. So I think that this weekend you're going to feel that things are just a lot easier, and you're going to find it easier to get on with people. I think that people in general are going to be more constructive, and at the same time, your general approach and your demeanour is going to be better. I think that people are going to be more sympathetic to your needs, and they're going to find you perhaps more warm and welcoming. Perhaps recently you haven't been particularly welcoming. There's something about you that's maybe been a little bit off-putting, but over the weekend this is changing, and I think that you're just someone who is just a lot easier to deal with. Though Capricorn, don't make judgments. The moon is making an opposition to Saturn, and I suppose there's a possibility with moon opposition Saturn that you listen to people, you respond to people, and you don't like what they're saying, you don't like their opinions, you think they've got something wrong, and you might feel that you need to correct them or disagree with them. That maybe you should just let it pass. So if someone tells you something that strikes you as being nonsense or something you strongly disagree with, I would just let it pass, unless it really, really is important. But by and large, if you let it pass, then you'll be showing some toleration. You'll be showing some sort of understanding and respect. And the moon, having made an opposition to Saturn, then it makes that trine to Venus. So don't get caught up, Capricorn, on individual differences and the way you and other people differ. Don't worry too much about that. I mean, in most cases. And remember also that some people just, they make a slip. They say something they don't necessarily mean, but you just take it out of context. You take it too seriously, and there's no need to take what people say too seriously. And so with moon trine Venus, and moon trine Venus, I think, is a time when relationships can really work. And I think that you and other people can find that you've just got just a natural rapport with each other. And that might have been sort of missing, recently, but now it's all coming together. And don't forget that Venus in Capricorn is making a sextile to Saturn, and Venus and Saturn are in mixed mutual reception by sign and exaltation, because Venus is in Saturn's sign, Saturn is in Venus's exaltation. So that all does sort of really work very well. And also, Capricorn, your verbal skills are actually pretty good at the moment. You're able to say what's on your mind, and you'll be able to say it in such a way that doesn't cause any trouble. People will listen to you, and you're going to be very direct, but direct not in a crazy way, just in a sort of calm, solid way. You're direct about the way you see things, and I think that will be understood. So it looks like being a good weekend where I think that relationships can work, and just try not to be too judgmental. Aquarius, you might feel that there are some somewhat difficult things to deal with, that things just aren't as simple as they should be, and maybe you take the view that people are making things more complicated than they have to be, and that is bothering you. And regardless of what is going on around you, you feel that you have your own private view, and you don't really want to partake of it. It's just not you. And really, I think that you're going to want to do things on your terms, everything on your terms. And I think we can see evidence of that with the fact that Venus is making a sextile to Saturn. So, Venus is about relating, and it's in Capricorn, and Capricorn is the sign before Aquarius. Yeah, Venus will move into Aquarius quite soon, but it's not there yet. And that there is with Venus in Capricorn a certain sense of distance, and with Venus sextile Saturn, you want everything to happen on your terms, and particularly sort of relationships. Relationships have to happen on your terms, on your way. It's not a situation where I think that you particularly want to compromise, particularly now with the moon is in Virgo. And in fact, the moon is making an opposition to Saturn in Virgo. So, the moon in Virgo is making an opposition to Saturn in Pisces. And that underlines the fact that there is a certain seriousness to the weekend. There are things you feel are important. They can't necessarily be discussed, and you just need to work it through in your own way. And it may be that you feel that there's a little bit of a now or never situation, because we do have a last quarter moon. Last quarter, the lunar cycle is about to end, so we better sort it out before it's too late. And so maybe you feel that there are certain details that other people have ignored. Maybe you've ignored them, and this weekend might be a great time to address them. And yeah, I think it's true that you'll be able to really get to the bottom of things this weekend. I mean, it might not be much fun, but I think that it will be quite useful, and you're going to be helped by the fact that your mind is going to be really sharp this weekend, very sharp. You're going to be able to really concentrate, and so it's a kind of concentration that doesn't necessarily need anyone's help, but there may be a point over the weekend where you just need a little bit of feedback. you don't have to spend a long time engaging in this feedback. There may just be someone you need to talk to just to make sure that you've got it right. And when you talk to someone about your ideas, about the conclusions you're coming to, and you get the feedback, that will give you a sense of certainty. And I think that certainty is a great thing to have. And you might not start the weekend being particularly certain, but I think by the end of a weekend, I'm not saying you're going to have 100% certainty, but you're going to have a very high percentage certainty by the weekend. And I think that can be helped by getting feedback from another person. Pisces, we have got an opposition between the Moon and Saturn this weekend. So Moon in Virgo is opposition Saturn in Pisces. And this opposition between the Moon and Saturn, it could be somewhat problematic in the sense that you might feel that there's a separation, that your priorities are not necessarily the same as other people's priorities, and the Moon in Virgo may represent someone who is annoying just from the outside, that's trying to get your attention, but you yourself are not particularly interested, and you're trying to sort of hold something back. But I think that you have to get some perspective on the thing. You shouldn't necessarily take people always at face value, and first impressions aren't necessarily the right impressions. I think that if you meet new people, if you come across new people over the weekend, I think to begin with, they're not going to be to your taste. I don't think that you're going to appreciate them, and you may feel that you need to move on. But the Moon, having made an opposition to Saturn, it does make a trine to Venus. So Moon trine Venus suggests that if you're prepared to work with people, try to hear them out, and if you give them a chance to explain themselves, you may get a different impression. So I think it is important to give people a chance. Now, at the same time, it is a last quarter moon. So we've got a new moon on December the 1st. We had a full moon on November the 15th. So this is the last quarter. And it's a time when Pisceans might feel that something needs to be done. Doesn't matter if it's a weekend, just something needs to be done. And you just feel a little bit unprepared, and you're just concerned that if you don't get it together very soon, that things might just never come together. That might be particularly the case if you're in the United States, because I'm very bad at these holidays, but I believe, if I've got it right, that next Thursday is Thanksgiving. And so in the run-up to Thanksgiving, people have got other priorities, and it might be difficult to get things done in the run-up to Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving itself can be a day when just nothing happens. So perhaps that's if you're a Pisces in the United States, this might be adding extra pressure, that maybe you feel you need to do something before Thanksgiving sort of starts to wreak havoc, and so perhaps there is some pressure. And with this last quarter moon, get it done now, get everything lined up, get people lined up, get your own plans lined up. And so, that's something, Pisces, that you might want to do. So don't necessarily have an easygoing and relaxed weekend. You can be relaxed, but I think it's perhaps important that you don't have an idle weekend. Even if you're not a United States, even if you're not a Cancerian in the United States, there still might be a bit of a last quarter sort of panic. You might want to make sure everything's done before we get into December, and so that's something you can do. I mean, I think that at the moment you are quite focused, and you're actually becoming more focused because the Sun in Sagittarius is starting to move towards a square of Saturn, and actually I think that Sun square Saturn, which it's not going to be exact for 10 days, but still it's starting, and it's as you move into December, as you move into a new lunar cycle, then I think the sort of focus and sense of dedication is probably going to be more intense. So you could say, Pisces, that it is a time for sort of taking yourself seriously, and don't forget your own power. Pisces, I think you actually are pretty powerful at the moment. You do have a lot of resources, and you can kind of concentrate them with almost laser beam precision. Once you have isolated what you want to do, Pisces, then you can start to, all your resources and all your energy can start to focus on a single point. And I think that you can get what you want. Okay, it'd be nice if you can get what you want by the end of the month, before Thanksgiving, if you're an American Pisces from the United States. But even if you're not, I think that you are moving forward, and I think it's a time where you need to sort of really seize the moment. And now I want to look at the weekend from the viewpoint of the I Ching. So I ask the question: what is the weekend going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 17, which is following. Now, this hexagram has no moving lines. Now, because it has no moving lines, that might tell us something about the weekend, regardless of what this hexagram is. And, with no moving lines, there is a sense that, things are not moving anywhere. It might indicate that it's a weekend that not a lot is going to happen. There isn't the means by which one thing can move to a next. So now one thing can move to another thing. Now, that could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on your perspective. If you're worried about things happening, and you're worried about something occurring over the weekend which might be unfortunate, then I suppose having a locked hexagram might be something to welcome. On the other hand, if you're looking forward to an exciting, action-packed weekend, you've got lots of things to do, you're hoping that things really come together, then the fact that it's locked may suggest that you should sort of pair your expectations. You may not be able to achieve as much as you had achieved. So that's something to say about a locked hexagram. Now, as far as the hexagram itself is concerned, hexagram number 17, it is about leadership, and it's not leadership as in sort of being a dictator or anything. It's about being able to attract people. People are able to follow you. People are prepared to follow you. Even if you are minded to sort of fade away. I mean, and there is a sense of sort of thunder in the lake. You can see the thunder in the lake here. You can see that the top trigram represents the lake, and the bottom trigram represents thunder. And in fact, this hexagram can be associated with if you're into tarot, can be associated with the Queen of Wands, because the Queen is of the court cards is a sort of watery principle, and the thunder is a sort of a fiery principle of the wands, hence the Queen of Wands. And so, I mean, I suppose if you're completely literal about it, it may be that in terms of the important people in your life, I suppose the Queen of Wands, if we want sort of mess around with I Ching and tarot and you bring them all together, then you might say that over the weekend you might have a lot to do with Queen of Wands would be, I suppose, an older woman who might be a fire sign, and she might have a certain impact on you. Of course, that might be you. When I say older, I don't know if there's a cut-off. Is the cut-off? I don't know. The cut-off is, I don't know, is it about 35 or 40? I suppose it depends on the situation. Older than you, maybe, however old you are. So that is one way of looking at it. But, following is about, what do you do to attract a following? And so even if you feel that you need to retreat, the thunder retreating into the lake, then that might be how it feels. The lake is somewhere sort of secure and nurturing, but the right people are still interested in you. They still want to follow you. Follow you, of course, in a completely beneficial way. I'm not talking about stalking or anything like this. I'm talking about following in a way that is harmonious. People looking to you for leadership, and the I Ching is reminds us that with following, if you want to attract followers, you must be prepared to follow, because if you don't understand other people, if you don't make some effort to understand other people, if you don't make some effort to adapt to other people, they're never going to adapt to you, because you're just going to be different. You're just going to be alien. And so adaptability really does matter. But it does seem that with the right approach, you can sort of get a following, or at least you can be a leader. The things you say are going to be taken seriously. And the reason they're going to be taken seriously is because you are tailoring what you say to other people's personalities and other people's priorities. Now, we can get some added information about following by looking at the nuclear hexagram. This is a hexagram which is in the sort of the middle of this hexagram, if we knock off the top and bottom lines. And so the nuclear hexagram for following is hexagram 53, which is development, the idea of something slowly developing. When we're talking about following, we're talking about a slow process where people, just start to understand who we are and what we've got to offer. And just remember that following was locked. Because it had no moving lines in it. So that kind of slows the whole thing down. So in terms of getting a following, of exercising leadership, it's not a dynamic dictatorial process. It's a process by which people slowly trust us, and it's a slow process, but it's a very definite process. And sooner or later we get the trust that we deserve. We don't get any more than we deserve. We get what we deserve, and I suppose it's whatever we put out, whatever effort we put in, we get that trust. So that's the weekend. I Ching is maybe suggesting that it's actually not going to be a particularly dramatic weekend, but it is a weekend where I think people will start to take us seriously, and they will take us seriously, particularly if we are prepared to take them seriously, and if we're prepared to adapt our message to fit our audience, or indeed to fit our followers. And now I want to consider Gary Gensler, because I'll be talking about the Ukraine after Gary Gensler. So Gary Gensler, if you don't know, is, I think he's chairman of the Securities and Exchange Board. Is that right? SEC. Sorry. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. So he's chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission. And his picture is on the thumbnail. And to many people, he is a hate figure, particularly in terms of those who are into cryptocurrencies. I don't really know the details, but he says, certain cryptocurrencies have to be, cryptocurrencies should be regarded as securities rather than something else, and it makes a difference. And the Securities Exchange Board, under his leadership, has been, quite vigorous in enacting lawsuits against various companies, both in America and abroad, who are involved in crypto trading and crypto business. And there's been a lot of resentment about it. And the Republicans under Trump, because Trump seems to be, this election cycle has been very pro-crypto. In the last election cycle, I mean, when he was president, he seemed to be fairly anti-crypto, but now he's kind of realized that the crypto industry can be his friends, and that's always with Donald. If you're his friend, if you're nice to him, he'll be nice back to you. And so Gary Gensler, I think he was originally a banker. I think he worked for Goldman Sachs. Then he sort of worked for the government. And yeah, he is a hate figure. And he has just announced that he's going to step down from his position on January the 20th. In other words, when Trump becomes president, Gensler will go. There was a question mark about whether or not Trump would have been able to have removed Gensler. But anyway, he's going. And I thought this might be a good opportunity to look at Gensler's chart. So here I don't have a time of birth for Gary Gensler. So here's Gary Gensler's horoscope, and so he was born on October the 18th, 1957. Again, because I have no time of birth, it's quite difficult to work out what it all means, really. I really would have liked in the Senate. We know we've got a load of Libra. How do you see Libra? I mean, you could see Libra in terms of sort of balance, I suppose, as someone who is able to work with people, a successful banker, someone who's worked well with people in government. He knows which people to please, which people not to please. That's one way of looking at it. Of course, Libra is a sign relating to justice and the law. And law, we sometimes forget that. So you could say that him with Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Libra is someone who quite likes to use the law, quite likes to enact lawsuits against people he disagrees with, people who he thinks are behaving incorrectly. In particular, over the last few years, his lawsuits against people involved in the crypto industry. And there is a view that he's really messed up the crypto industry in the United States. The United States should be an innovator in terms of cryptocurrency, but it's not allowed to be an innovator because of people like Gary Gensler and the Democrats. And of course, Elizabeth Warren is she seems to hate cryptocurrency. I mean, Kamala Harris, she said something in the end that was vaguely pro-cryptocurrency, but I think that was because I think Kamala Harris was told that she needed to get black men on her side, and she said, she kind of got the idea that black men were into cryptocurrency, and so she had to say something positive about them, and I don't think that was taken particularly seriously. And so that's one aspect of Gary Gensler. Another aspect of Gary Gensler is that he doesn't have any Earth in his chart. I'm always interested by people who don't have any Earth in their chart. Okay, he's got Pluto in Virgo, but that's a transpersonal planet. We've all got Pluto in Virgo, haven't we? I mean, I've got Pluto in Virgo. I was born in 1962, so Pluto was in Virgo from 1956, 7 through to, 1970, 71? I mean, it's something like that. So that doesn't mean he's got any Earth in his chart. So I'm always interested in someone who is into who's into finance, who has a finance-orientated job, and they don't have any earth in their chart. What does that mean? Now, he was a banker with no earth. So you could say that someone who's got no earth, there is a strong sense of compensation. That if you've got no earth, you want to compensate by really doing something very, very sort of material. So that's one way. His no earth means, and it just might mean that from a psychological level, Gary Gensler actually has a sort of a weak sense of, what is real, what is not real, what is, the earth in which he sort of touches. By the way, he's also got no water in his chart. Now, I think that when he was at university, he was into rowing. And so it's kind of interesting that he has no water in his chart. So when he was at university, he's got sort of Neptune kind of conjunct the North Node. So the fact that rowing was his thing when he was at university, that's kind of nice, actually. I mean, that's a good form of compensation. You compensate for having no water by engaging in boats or something like that. But the lack of earth. So in other words, someone who is very positive. He's fire and air. But so this lack of earth, he just doesn't get it. There's something he doesn't get. I mean, obviously he's very good with finance, but at the same time, on an emotional level, he doesn't fully get it. And so perhaps this means in terms of cryptocurrency, when he sees cryptocurrency, which is so abstract, with Bitcoin, there's this concept of someone just creates this digital stuff backed by nothing, and people are buying it. And of course, the altcoins, Dogecoin, what else, Shiba Inu coin or whatever it is. It's just so abstract. But someone who has no earth in his chart may, at a fundamental level, just be completely freaked out by it. Perhaps someone who had some earth would have been a little more reasonable about it. But maybe that is the actual psychological motivation for his desire to sort of go after the cryptocurrency industry. I mean, it's just a possibility. And so, yeah, he's incredibly positive, with basically no personal planets in negative signs. I mean, by negative, I'm not being negative in a derogatory sense. It's just negative signs are like, the water and earth signs. So very positive. He wants to make things happen. So you make him chair of the SEC, and he's very activist. So that's what he's doing, and so that sort of makes sense. And there are other things in his chart which may not be immediately apparent. And one thing is the fact that he's got Uranus square the nodal axis. And so Uranus square the nodal axis, I mean, Uranus in a way represents the new. The new as in something new, technology perhaps, and it's square his nodes. So he has his nodes where he wants to go to, sort of north. He has a north node in Scorpio. This is where he should be going. A north node in Scorpio square Uranus. In terms of his destiny, he has something that really sort of freaks him out, and Uranus is opposition Chiron. So he says Uranus opposition Chiron square his north node, his nodal axis. It's bothering him, and maybe he's been responding in an inappropriate way because of this south node in Taurus. South node in Taurus is, with north node in Scorpio, perhaps he should be getting into the complexities of cryptocurrency, but south node in Taurus, it's perhaps easiest for him to be more sort of down to earth and material about it. If you can't touch it, it's not real. But it's perhaps that south node in Taurus could be a bit of a problem for him. And yeah, the sun semi-square Saturn, and is something that we should be looking at, and we can see this on the. And the sun is, I'll be looking at, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the 90-degree dial. So the 90-degree dial is, here it is. Here's a 90-degree dial. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't, let me just go to that, what I was really talking about. Sorry, Venus conjunct Saturn. Venus conjunct Saturn. I think this is important because you could say that Venus is a representative of money. Venus in Sagittarius, I mean, that's very sort of cryptocurrency, isn't it? This unusual money, digital money, money that can be transmitted very fast, money that is apparently not real, but Venus is conjunct Saturn. He's trying to understand this and take control of it, and it's really hard work for him, and I think it's really fundamentally, psychologically very puzzling for him. And the sun is semi-square, that Venus conjunct Saturn, and it's more than that. And if we look at this with the hypothetical planets, we throw in the hypotheticals. There is a planet called Admetos, and so there's Admetos at 25.5 Aries, which is opposition his sun. So Admetos opposition the sun. So, what is Admetos? So Admetos is one of Alfred Witter's hypothetical planets. And the legend of Admetos is about a king who didn't want to die. And he just held on. I think he got someone else to sort of die in his place. I mean, in the end, he knew he had to die anyway, but it's postponing something, it's delaying something, it's perhaps delaying the inevitable. And I think that this may be very much what we were perhaps seeing with cryptocurrency. Here is someone with Sun opposition Admetos. He wants to hold things back. It's all too difficult for him, it's too chaotic, but let's see what we can do as chair of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Sun opposition Admetos. And if we then look at the 90-degree dial, we can then see it in a different way. So here's the 90-degree dial. Here is his sun. Remember, conjunctions, opposition squares are shown as conjunctions. Semi-squares and sesquiquadrates are shown as opposition. So this is this structure in a 90-degree dial. There is his sun conjunct Admetos, and there's his Venus. There's his Venus-Saturn conjunction. So that is his sun opposition Admetos. There is his Venus-Saturn conjunction, and those two configurations, they are in semi-square sesquiquadrate with each other. So the 90-degree dial really shows a really powerful lineup. And I just do get this idea of someone really trying to hold things back, trying to hold the inevitable back. And of course now with the Trump victory, it's over, and he realizes it's over, and he's going to stand down on January 20th. One other thing about Gary Gensler, and why perhaps he might be a negative for the United States, is, see, here's the United States' chart, and we'll put Gary Gensler's chart on the outer wheel. We'll do it. I think that's the one. Okay, so no, that's the wrong one. Sorry about that. So what we'll do is, there's a USA chart. We'll put Gary Gensler on the outer wheel. What is Gary Gensler doing to the USA? And so there is the USA's ascendant using the Sibley chart, assuming the USA was born at 5:10 in the afternoon on July the 4th, 1776 in Philadelphia. 12 degrees 21 Sagittarius. And so his Saturn is on the United States' Venus, and on United States' ascendant. And it's also opposition the United States' Uranus. So again, he's a Saturnine figure, at least in terms of America is concerned. And, United States, Sagittarius rising, I suppose you could see that with sort of free enterprise, people doing what they want, and at least in a capitalist sense. The crypto industry would be very Sagittarian, but his Saturn in Sagittarius doesn't like it. He's trying to restrict it. But anyway, he's not going to be chairman of the SEC for very much longer, and he is standing down on January the 20th of next year. Turning now to Ukraine, and we had this big strike on Dnipro. That is the Ukrainian name for the city. The Russian term is Dnipropetrovsk. So here's a chart for the strike. And so what happened was that this missile, which sort of medium-range missile, I think was fired from sort of 1,000 miles away or something like that. And this missile is designed to carry nuclear warheads. And it didn't obviously carry a nuclear warhead. I think it just carried a solid lump of metal. But it's going incredibly fast. It goes something like... Is it something like, we're dealing with kilometers a second. Every second it travels, I don't know, is it 2 kilometers or I don't know, something like that. It's just going unbelievably fast. So that means even if there's no explosives on it, it's going so fast that when it hits a target, you've got a kinetic effect. And, it was such a dramatic thing that just before launching this missile, the Russians informed the United States what they were doing, because this could potentially be seen as a nuclear threat, because it was that kind of missile, and many see this as an escalation of the war, and obviously it was done in response to the ATACMS. The Americans facilitated an ATACMS attack on Bryansk, and then the British, you had the Storm Shadow attack in Kursk. The key point is, well, some people would say, oh, well, the Ukrainians have got every right to do this. But the point is, these ATACMS and Storm Shadows cannot be launched without programming not the Ukrainians can't program it. You need people from America, perhaps from Britain, but you need people authorized by the British and or particularly the US government to do this. So that's why it's seen as an act of war, whatever you think about the rights and wrongs of the situation. And so this is the response. And in fact, I think that the Russians described it as a combat test. So they were testing to see how the missile worked, but in a combat situation. They were testing it on this factory in Dnipro. We don't quite know how effective it is, but of course what happens is the Ukrainians always underestimate the damage. And of course the Western press likes to take the Ukrainian reports at face value. But it's certainly a very serious escalation. And I don't think that the chart in itself is particularly spectacular. The moon is conjunct Mars, kind of, but I suppose we have to remember that Mars is starting to go very slowly, and Mars goes stationary retrograde at 6-10 degrees Leo, and so the moon is kind of highlighting Mars. And if we just remember that from the USA's chart, the USA has its north node at 6 degrees 36 Leo. So I think that perhaps that's what it's about. The US having its north node at 6 degrees Leo, the north node represents its connections with other people, with other countries ultimately. And so Mars is not even exactly on the United States' north node, and we're now starting to see how it works. So, that's what I would have said is the main thing to say about this chart. Of course, if one looks at this chart closely, one can always find things. a lot of stuff at 6. So, I mean, the thing is, I don't know precisely what time the strike was. Maybe it was 6 degrees Scorpio, maybe, but at 5, I don't know. I don't think we can say for sure that Scorpio was rising. I suppose we might want to compare that chart with Russia's horoscope. So I think I've got Russia's chart somewhere in here, or maybe I haven't. But if you let me just look at Russia's chart. So if we look at Russia's, so here is Russia's chart. Now, just to get some context with Russia, so if I take Christmas Day, I mean Western Christmas Day, not Russian, not the Orthodox Christmas Day 1991. So here is Russia's chart, and so if we put the sort of missile attack in terms of what was going on for Russia, I think that, you know, broadly speaking, a lot of this escalation has been connected with this Mercury-Jupiter opposition. So at the time so Russia has its Mars at 19 Sagittarius, and so at the time of the attack, Jupiter is opposition Russia's Mars and Mercury is conjunct Russia's Mars. So you could say that the transiting Jupiter-Mercury midpoint was on Russia's Mars, and so Russia's Mars is going to be activated on and off for the next few months by Jupiter and Mercury. And of course, Mars is a planet of aggression. It's a planet of war, and you can see how Russia has completely freaked out America, because America's sun is at 13 degrees Cancer on Independence Day. So Russia's Uranus is at 1319 Capricorn. So Russia is an increasingly disturbing place for the United States. I think that is that's certainly true. I mean, if we set up the USA's chart and we put Russia, you see there it is. You see there is the United States' sun at 1319 Cancer, and Russia's Uranus is at 1319 Capricorn. So this is devastating for the United States in a way. I mean, Russia, and I think fundamentally, has completely surprised America, and I think I'll be talking about that just in a moment. I just wanted to finish off with the Oreshnik attack. So, although I don't think that the chart of the Oreshnik attack is particularly spectacular, what is interesting is the prenatal full moon. So you can see that the moon is there was a full moon at sort of late Scorpio, and that was a full moon before the attack. And so here is the prenatal full moon set for where has it gone? The prenatal moon prior to the attack. Remember, this is a November the 15th attack on 2024. And there you have it. This moon, set for Dnipro, remember that full moon. Everyone was getting excited about that November the 15th full moon. And because of the involvement with Uranus, here we're seeing what that full moon was all about. That full moon was right on Dnipro's midheaven, absolutely. And so this is where we are seeing the full potential of that full moon, I think. And we can do some astrocartography for that. Now, when I did look at this full moon, at the time of this full moon, and I gave my view about how this full moon was going to work out, and I suppose I kind of got my geography wrong. I was looking at the wrong part of Ukraine. So let me just do the astro map with Ukraine to look at my logic and just look at actually what in the end went and happened. So So here's Ukraine, and here is Dnipro. Here's Dnipro, and so let me make sure that you can. Oh, I'm going to have to move this. Sorry, let me move this. I think you'll be able to see that now. I'll make sure you can. Okay, I think you can see that now. Okay, so here is here's that line, that new moon line, and there's all the places where the new moon was on the midheaven, all the places where Uranus was on the midheaven. Now, the way I saw that chart was I was just focusing on Crimea, and I was thinking, well, maybe this is a time when the Russians, when the Ukrainians are going to attack the Kerch Bridge, because the Kerch Bridge was here. And I wasn't really thinking about, this bit. It's a kind of, because there's always stuff going on in eastern Ukraine. But as it happened, this was the key point. I think this full moon is about the attack on Dnipro. And so, as we can see from this chart, the moon is conjunct Uranus on that point. And so this is a very important point. Now, I have been looking at sort of comments on this on my channel. It seems a lot of people are concerned about nuclear war, and in general, people are concerned about nuclear war. And I get some comments though about people saying, "Well, look, the Russians, the Ukrainians have got every right to defend themselves." All this kind of stuff. I take a realist view. You've got to look at the reality of the situation, And by the way, it's complicated. Ukraine is complicated, and a lot of people in the West like to think that Ukraine is entirely in the right and Russia is entirely in the wrong. Whenever you've got a war, with certain very rare exceptions, okay, maybe the Second World War, but when you've got a war, the truth is often somewhere in the middle, and so, there is a sort of a one-sided view of this war, and there is a view, which I think I subscribe to, that in many respects the United States made this war happen through their supporting of a coup in 2014, which led to the Ukrainians got rid of an elected president, but I don't want to sort of get too much into that here. But the question is, why are the elites in the West, people like Biden and Keir Starmer, why are they pushing it? Why are they pushing it so much? And I think that is a question that I've been thinking about a huge amount, and I probably need to do a separate video on this. But I think that a lot of it is connected with the fact that we had this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in 2020, and as I've always said with this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, as I said when I did a blog on my website, but I haven't put up anything for ages on my website, but I put up this blog post on 2020 when I was suggesting that it was a Russian decade or the Russian 20 years. This is a great mutation. Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. It's the first of a series of Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions in air signs. I mean, I know we had a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in air signs in the sort of very early 1980s, but this is it. This is a great mutation conjunction. Something has changed, and this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is at 0 degrees Aquarius, and there is an association between Aquarius and Russia. If you look at Ptolemy, what parts of the world are ruled by Aquarius? It's a lot of Russia is ruled by Aquarius. It's really about the Russian 10 years, maybe even the Russian 20 years, or maybe even a change in the whole balance of power. And I think that some people are more impacted by it than others. Some people recognize the change. Some people welcome the change. And I don't know how this change entirely works out. It's about, I think, the end of the West, quite possibly, with this great mutation conjunction. And there is actually a link between. I did a video on it that you can link this video with this chart with a chart happening in the 13th century during the Mongol invasion. So there's a real fear here about the East, and so why would the elites be so upset about what's going on in Russia? I mean, if you think about it, people didn't worry too much before 1989 when there were Russians in East Berlin. You know, there were Russians in East Germany. There were Russians everywhere, and people didn't lose any night's sleep over it. But now they're losing sleep over Russians in parts of Ukraine and over an area which Russia has decided it wants to have control over. And you can say what you like, but you have to, as far as I'm concerned, you have to be a realist about it. You know, that's, you know, you've got to look at the balance of power. You've got to look at escalation dominance. You know, Russia has escalation dominance, and what escalation dominance means, I mean, it has many meanings. It's not just about the ability to escalate on a physical level. It's about the psychological ability to escalate. So Russia is prepared to protect its vital interests, like Ukraine, to the point perhaps of having a nuclear war, of firing off nuclear weapons. But if you're in America, small town America, are you prepared to, is Ukraine so important to you that you are prepared to risk a nuclear war? You know, I'm living in Lakewood, I'm living about 3 miles from a very large base. What's it? I forget. The Lewis McCord, whatever, air base, military base, perfect target. You know, are people in this place in sort of Western Washington state prepared to risk nuclear war for Ukraine? Well, ultimately, no. And so Russia does, I think, have complete escalation dominance. So whatever you think about Ukraine, it is pretty crazy what the West is doing. But the question, so why? And so if you're talking about elites, people like Biden or Starmer or whatever, you have to understand that the more power you have, the more in control of wider collective forces you are. So if you're an ordinary person, you can pretty much do what you want. You can. You've got a lot of freedom. But as soon as you become the President of the United States or the Prime Minister of Britain, you are the tool of the collective. And you are also, in a way, plugged into the collective. And the collective knows that something is happening. And so the elites are more crazy than ordinary people, because once you have power, you and particularly in this case, you are part of the collective, and you kind of know what's happening. So it would seem that Russia is much more dangerous now than the Soviet Union was from an ideological point of view. At least this is what I'm thinking. And so what did the Soviet Union represent? Whatever, workers' paradise and all this. I think people in the West fundamentally knew that it was just nonsense, that it wasn't going to happen, that it wasn't really any ideological threat. And then communism fell. I remember always thinking with Russia and after communism fell, what does Russia actually believe in? They need to believe in something. They need to have some positive ideology. When is it going to happen? I think it has happened now. Russia does have an ideology. Its ideology is now it's now a conservative Christian country that is it's very conservative. It supports the nation state. It is completely at odds with Western liberalism and sort of Western toleration. I suppose all this sort of trans diversity stuff. That's part of it, and it just represents. It's become a representative of an ideology, a new ideology. And we shouldn't think in the West that some things are better than others. I mean, I know we might think that Western liberalism is great, but it may be great, but there's no reason to believe that Western liberalism is going to last forever. And that's perhaps why, as an astrologer, you shouldn't be too progressive. You shouldn't really believe in anything. You shouldn't regard Western liberalism as something special, something to value. It will pass. Everything will pass. And it may be that what the message that Russia is putting out is the future. And I think looking at this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, I suspect it is the future, and we are seeing the slow decline of everything the West represents. And that is why people like Biden and Starmer and the Western elites are so frantic to pursue this war against Ukraine. It's got nothing to do with Ukraine, by the way, nothing to do with Ukraine on a psychological and collective level. And so, going back to this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction which was at Jupiter, which was at at 0 degrees 29 Aquarius. Let's compare this conjunction with the time of the presidential election, and I think that this will start to make sense. So this conjunction, by the way, is set for London, and of course I think it's at the time of this conjunction on December the 21st, 2020. Jupiter-Saturn was conjunct the descendant, and I kind of see that as like the sun setting on Britain. Britain is very destructive. It's kind of the end of, certainly the final end of a British Empire. It's the end, and it's a slow end. But in terms of the presidential election, let's just look at the day when it became clear that Trump had won, and so let's have a look at this president. Okay, here it is. So let's now. So we will put that. We will put that conjunction, the 2020 conjunction, if I can find it, and on the outer wheel we'll put the presidential election here. So Mars was at 0 degrees 39, or was 0 degrees Leo, when it became clear that Trump had won. And so that Mars was opposition, that the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And Pluto was about to go into Aquarius. So what's happened at the time of the attack? Pluto's now in Aquarius. Pluto is now on the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And it seems that as Pluto went into Aquarius, what we have seen is Biden and Starmer and the West going crazy. That craziness seems to really linked with Pluto going into Aquarius. And I think we're actually starting to see the very first sign of Pluto in Aquarius. And what's happened is Pluto in Aquarius, it's like conjunct Jupiter-Saturn, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. People like Biden and Starmer know it's over. They know that Russia is going to win, but it's not just about Russia going to win. They know that a whole set of values, which goes beyond Russia, is now at stake. It's going slowly but surely. I know. It's trivial to look at wokeness. Of course, as I've said, wokeness. We're at peak wokeness with Neptune in Pisces, and it's when Neptune goes into Aries, things will change. But and I think that's what it's about. And so when you're asking why are all these people prepared to risk nuclear war, and I think in some ways they are prepared to risk nuclear war, because it's almost like it's almost a better red than dead idea. I mean, not that Russia now is remotely red. It's a Christian conservative country. It's not remotely socialist or communist. But the elites and the collective which they're plugged into just know the game is over, and so they're cornered, and they know that the ideology that Russia puts out, is the future, and I think that is part of it. And they also know, of course, that the West is over, and they're sort of looking at the BRICS, and they're crazy. So but it's not everyone in the West, of course. A lot of people in America, not so much in Britain, but a lot of people in America don't want a nuclear war, are really upset about Biden, what Biden is doing. I mean, particularly, for example, Trump and people, or perhaps on the conservative right, because I suppose people on the conservative right, some of them, not all of them, I mean, there are these neocons, Republican neocons who do it, but they perhaps have different motives, but they perhaps, it's a Christian socialist country, it's a Christian conservative country, and so the end of a lot of sort of liberal values, these values being questioned, is perhaps something they're welcoming. And I suppose perhaps that's also why sort of a lot of populists in the United States and Europe are relatively easygoing about what Russia is doing. Russia is not a threat. It's not a threat to what they believe in. And because in a way, perhaps populism represents the future anyway, so they perhaps welcome it. So I think it's about Western liberalism and, to an extent, Western hegemony, those representing it just understanding that the game is up. It wasn't a problem during the Cold War because they knew ultimately that the Soviet ideology was not going anywhere. But now Russia actually represents the future. And I think that people just can't deal with that. And that's why I think a lot of people in the West, a lot of the elites in the West, are prepared to risk a nuclear war. Anyway, I know to some of you that might sound like one huge ill-informed rant, but I thought I'd just give my view. I hadn't sort of really sort of thrashed it out. I mean, maybe I should do a video on it at a later stage where I sort of present it in a more structured way. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. I hope you found this video of some interest. If you did enjoy this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed and you enjoyed the video, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you again very soon.